13? You got ID? Do you know what a koala is?
No, I don't.
Do you have ID? You're 13? That's old enough, right?
Yeah.
You have to be a
Somebody cover his ears. I'm teasing.
Is Rita coming back?
She's gonna go on the microphone. Why don't we start with a little Q&A? And do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Danny. I'm a Libra. I showed up at a studio and I recorded a bunch of lines and here I am. Fuck.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. All right, so why don't we do this? I'm Steve. This is Danny. We can talk voice acting, and everything that kind of goes into it. I think
That sounds like it's germane.
Germane. And then also maybe kind of like blow off some of the myths and
Blow off the myths.
and be honest about the nature of the business. So it's so reasonable, isn't it? I'm so hungover from last night. I had to drink a chalice for a joining.
Yes.
No, it's good. There was like Everclear and all other kinds of stuff.
One goal.
Yeah, one goal. That's
You can bring
even high
moonshine
school.
later.
Was it?
I can bring moonshine later.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
120 proof.
120 proof.
120 proof. Why are you not
It's
kidding?
like signing stuff like.
It's all over everything. It's crazy.
120, that's like for 13-year-olds.
Give me your room number. So that.
Wait, is he the only kid here? I mean, not kids at heart. How old are you?
Turning 14 Thursday.
All right, so you're all
We're
teenagers.
good.
So you're 13. In a week, you're like a week. Still, I do that all the time. I'm turning 21 in another life. You'll find as you get older, you want to go back the other way. So why don't we just open up to some questions and start off that way and get the ball rolling. All right, let's roll the ball. Who would like to go first? Over here.
How did you both get started?
In
Anything. Your first project.
So when I was 13. Why don't you talk about how you got into voice?
Good question. Well, when I was about, I don't know, a year and a half, these words started coming out of my mouth. Before that, it was just sort of like gurgling and coos. And people found it adorable, but you can't really accomplish anything. It's hard to order a beverage, for example. Although you pretty much get his titty milk. Voiceover.
Kids
So,
don't know what that is.
they're almost 14. That's all good. Actually, the first voiceover I did was on my own projects, making my own short films and doing the voiceover on that. I did many years ago made a film called Pancake Boy about a guy who's raised in the wild by pancakes. And
That worked out for him.
yeah, and that was probably my first voiceover, more or less. Yeah.
Voice of the pancake.
Of the Pancake Boy.
Of the pancake.
And he goes through all these different transitions. He's a bug at one point, and it's you can see it.
I think you got to see it.
Yeah, well,
See it.
little hit of canvas. That's not gonna.
It's
taint the
deep.
Experience. Yeah. So really doing my own stuff first, and then eventually I was like, well, okay, all right, I'll get a demo done. And your demo is that's like your headshot if you're an on-camera actor. And then you gotta find an agent, and then you gotta just audition. And mostly what you do as any kind of actor, voice or otherwise, is you audition, and every now and then you get something. And here I am.
Wow. Yeah, it's true about the auditioning thing. You can have 20 or 30 auditions before you book something because the market is so, in LA especially, the competition is so fierce. And I mentioned this last night. There's there's a few people who are really great who do the majority. Sort of break into voiceovers is a very difficult thing. And it's important to have a rule, which I don't have. I haven't got one of those. I have no demo. Yeah, I have no demo.
Well, hey, everything I said just...
Well, you're doing a lot more than I am because I have no demo. It's just that I've never got around to doing it. So, Dragon Age came about because, well, most of my auditions you do at home on the mic, where you go into the office at your agents. Occasionally, you'll go out in a casting director's office. But mostly, if you can do it at home, and you just send it in. And you sit, and literally you get up, you go into a booth, you've got a little homemade booth, and you go through that. And I auditioned for 3 or 4 things. You know what? The first thing that I did actually audition for was
My audio is
Halo,
catching.
which I'm the voice of the narrator in the kind of behind the scenes video that they have at the beginning. They have this kind of narrator. You don't see him, but you see him kind of very realistic, you kind of hear the voice in the background. That was the first thing. And then I auditioned for Dragon Age like 6 months earlier or something, hadn't heard anything, and they were casting with us. And then it wasn't going well, and then they called me, and they were like, would you come in? Yeah, like a few days later, and just kind of launch into it. Which was good, because then they told me what they didn't like about the first performance, so I can make sure I didn't do that.
Not getting fired is...
Not getting fired is awesome. And you never know, because you never know that can happen. I did this Jake and the Neverland Pirates, this character recently, and I'm not a singer. I'm not a singer. It's not on my special skills. I never claim to be a singer. I turn up on this Jake and the Neverland Pirates, and it goes, here's the script and here's the song. And I'm like, I don't sing, you guys. And they're like, oh, it's fine. We saw you can hold the tune. I'm like, no, I don't sing. And they're like, you'll be fine. You did something I did something in Turbo HD, where I think it was, where I sang a song, which was really charactery. So I'm like, can I do this like Rex Harrison? Can I speak it? Can I just speak the words and I'll be fine? Like, no, we want you to sing the song. And it was brutal. And this was earlier this year. I was pissed. They were pissed. I'd already recorded the dialogue. And that was fine. And this was the second episode, so they couldn't fire me because we already kind of, once you're in, you're in. And needless to say, I didn't go that. But I just remember being in the booth, sweating with these people on the other line, and you can see that they're just, let's just do it a line at a time. And then it was like, let's do a few words at a time. This is the note. It was rough. So, and I thought they were going to fire me right there and there. You never know, something gets thrown at you, and that's it.
Yeah, people are disorganized. It's crazy. Sometimes I'm amazed that anything ever gets done in this world. Period. I don't mean just this world. I mean the world at large. And that's certainly true of show business as well.
Oh, yeah. All right, other questions? Yes?
Okay, I know this is a really common one, but I've never heard this from Danny, and I'd like to hear your opinion, because I've never heard you say this.
Okay.
Did you guys always really want to be performers? And did you know that you always wanted to be performers?
Yeah.
And especially Danny, did you move to be in the business, or were you always kind of...
Stationary?
Yes.
You can take that first.
You're talking about relocating, right? Not actually
Yes.
moving my body around. I was encased in concrete for years, so there was not a lot of movement at that point. Good question. I think the first creative thing I remember doing was writing, actually. As a little kid, writing stories, Mad Magazine, and stories. But the performing thing, I think middle school, in musical theater. I auditioned for the Music Man. It's Winter, Peru, singing Gary, Indiana. Ring a bell? Yeah. Anyone from Gary? Yeah?
Used to be from Fort Wayne.
You're from Gary? For real? Just gonna quit fucking with you. Gary, Indiana, Gary. Okay, so that was kind of my first, that's the first performing moment I remember. I was in San Francisco. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's where I started doing all this stuff, music and filmmaking and writing and voice acting and all that stuff. And then I moved to LA 11 years ago. It's a tough place.
Well, that's
you don't know.
define live in LA. I mean, that's the thing. You exist in LA. I wouldn't say you live in
Survive in LA. Or you don't. You see those people on the side of the freeway, passed away, gnarled, twisted bodies. Yeah, so I moved there. But I'll tell you, you can do this kind of work anywhere. I mean, not just voiceover, because you're right, you can record it in your underwear at home. But there, you know, San Francisco has, I got a lot of work there. And you come to LA, and part of the problem with LA is just you've heard of what I call the din. There's just so much, you know, quantity. Does it sound like I wish I stayed in San Francisco? Yeah, you know, LA has some nice things. I like the mountains. The weather's great. And it's been an interesting 11 years. How many years do you?
Well, to answer that question, yes, I always knew I wanted to be a performer from a very, very, very young age. I joined a dance club, dancing school when I was 6. I learned magic when I was 5. I think I remember being in school. Here's where it was. This is where I got the bug. So I'm in school. We have an assembly where the little theatre group goes from school to school. And this is another example of, like, you never know who you touch with the work that you do, right? So these guys come in, and they want a kid from the audience to help in a scene. So they pull me up and take me backstage, and they go, listen, kid, right, so when we say, what is a spade for, you have to say leaning on, right? And I was like, okay, and they're like, it's a joke. And I was like, I didn't get it. I did not get the joke. And so, all right, just say leaning on. I said, okay. So I go out there in front of everybody, and they give me a spade. And they go, hey, kid, what do you think that spade's for? And I'm like, leaning on? And the crowd, the laughter from these kids who thought I was being cheeky, it was awesome. I was like, oh, aha. To be or not to be, straight and that was it. That was when the bug bit. So then my mum got me this kit called these little kits with little plays for kids, where you get the costumes and you get like 5 or 6 scripts, and it's called Watch Witch, and I remember that. And I couldn't get any of my friends in school to do it with me, so they doing all the parts. And so I was in the theatre company, and then I got to join a repertory theatre company, which was I didn't make much money, but we were doing musicals, which was fun because I don't sing. And we were doing classical plays and modern plays, and it was a great experience. But then, location-wise, yes. So I'm in LA, and I'm doing theatre, and then I'm doing my magic, and kind of both are supporting each other. And all my friends are saying, you know, one day we're going to go to Hollywood, and we're going to knock on some doors, and we're going to show them what it's about, you know. And nobody was going. No, one day we're gonna go. I said, you guys are full of shit, I'm going. So I sold everything I had, which gave me about £2,000 in '89. This was 1989, and I jumped on a plane with a holiday visa, essentially, and went to Hollywood, and that was it. And then it was literally a case of knocking on doors, and a lot of good luck. I remember first apartment complex I went to was run by an English couple. This was right in Hollywood, right next to Man's Chinese Theatre. And I went, there was an English couple, and I said, I'd like to rent an apartment, please. And she said, well, do you have a job? And I said, no. And she said, do you have credit? And I was like, what's that? And so she said, well, you're from the home country, so I'm going to give you a break. Well, Rick, you're going to promise me you'll get a job. And I said, I will, I promise. She said, what are you going to do? I said, I want to be an actor. I said, what are you going to fall back on? Which is an expression I hate, because it basically means when you fail, what are you going to do? And I said, I want to be a magician. So, I'm going to say that to my mom. She was like, you're fine. So that was great. But then she said to me, she said, I think I can help you get a job. She said, because my day job is on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, and there's a place called David O'Dell Silver. Can you sell silver? And I was like, I can sell anything. She was like, all right. So she got me an interview. And I went and I got this job selling silver for like 6 months. And I remember meeting it was crazy. These people would come in, like Jimmy Stewart's wife would come in, and all these kind of like this is so weird. I'm selling like mints and vases and all this kind of crazy stuff. And so the same conversation, we were talking about jobs. She said, where do you plan on working as a magician? And I said, well, I've heard about this place called the Magic Castle. And I want to see, it's somewhere in California, I have no idea where. And she said, come in. And she dragged me outside, and a block away on a little mountain, there's this Victorian kind of mansion house, and she said, that's the Magic Castle. Complete fluke. So, you know, I felt there was really, I was being watched over. Because what could have happened was I couldn't have got an apartment, I couldn't have got a job, and I could have gone to a place that was so far from the Magic Castle I would never. So by complete fluke, there it was, right by Men's Chinese Theatre, and I walked up and auditioned. And it just, I was very lucky, but it's also part of the arrogance of youth, in the naivety of youth, in that you kind of don't think these things through. Nowadays, I probably wouldn't do that, but it's part of my nature to jump in the deep end. And so I feel like I went to Hollywood to bang on doors and to make that happen, and it took 3 years before I got my first speaking part, you know, and that was one scene in Married with Children. And then from there, I was doing a lot of co-star parts, and then it grew to guest star parts, and you have to say, I'm not going to do any more co-stars, I'm only going to do guest stars, and then you have to say, I'm not going to do any more guest stars, I just want to do series regular roles, and you start turning stuff down, which is really hard, but you have to force your career forward, because no one else is going to do it for you. But LA it's a beast to live there, but I feel like, as long as you don't take the town serious, right? Well, if somebody says, let's do lunch, I know I'm never going to eat with them. So, you know, I don't take anything. Everyone goes there to reinvent themselves. I reinvented myself. Everyone reinvents themselves. Like everyone is, and it's not an easy town, but I feel like the secret is to relocate and to stay. Even when it's hard, you have to stay. Because I meet people, I don't know about you, but I meet people who move to LA and they're like, oh yeah, I was #1 in my drama class in high school, and I'm totally gonna get spotted, and oh my god. And you're like, it doesn't happen. And so a year later, you see them and they're like, I'm going back. I'm depressed. There's nothing to see.
A year is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A year is nothing in that town.
No, it's true. You learn not to count on anything, but it's that trick of, it's like a dichotomy of wanting to be sort of optimistic, but at the same time assuming that everybody's full of shit, because they probably are. And stuff just...
They're as full of shit as you are. That's
probably a better attitude, yeah. And it's just, you know, sometimes with the best of intentions, it's just hard to get things off the ground, you know? It's hard, and once you have something, it's hard to sustain. Whether it's an independent project, or whether it's, you know, something that's seriously showbiz big stuff. So yeah, I like what you said.
I remember, excuse me one second. I remember doing these acting workshops, which I hated. They're called casting director workshops, and they're evil, because you basically pay to meet a casting director. And I never got any, but they were recommended to me by my very late agent. So I was doing these casting director workshops. I remember this guy, and I would say, yes, you have to stay positive, but I also think you have to be quietly confident that, just be confident, if you feel it, it's going to happen. You're not going to know when, and you're not going to know how. I often recommend people read Michael Caine's biography, From the Elephant to Hollywood, because it's brilliant. It shows how persistence and connections and life kind of all comes together for you if that's your plan. Quietly confident. So I'm doing these workshops. I remember this guy who was a very short, nebbishy Jewish guy who used to play doctors and lawyers all the time, like small personals. And he said to me one day, he said, so you really think you're going to make it? And I was like, I think something's going to come through. And he goes, but you're such an individual look. And I said, yeah, well, so was Jack Nicholson. He couldn't get work anywhere. He became his own look. And he goes, yeah, he said, but I don't know, my forehead and accent, and I was really skinny at the time. And he goes, now look at me. He says, I could be any man. He says, I could be a lawyer, I could play a doctor. He said, I'll always work. But I just, you know, and I remember thinking, you can't word of at the same time, I was like inside, I had this core that was like, no, I'm going to stick it through, something will come through. And shortly after that, I did this short-lived sitcom called Nikki on the WB, where I played this very effeminate choreographer, and which I didn't want to do, because I didn't want to play this kind of caricature. And then this guy comes up to me who's in the cast and he goes, you know, there's this show that's casting. I can't even do a British accent. You should go read for it. You're perfect for it. Tell your agent. I tell my agent, it gets me an audition. And I go in and this is crossing field. So I go in and I do the audition. It's the worst audition I've ever had. And I'm devastated when I leave because the director of the series, Alan Arkush, was like redirecting me left, right, and center, and that was a nightmare. And I just felt like I wasn't getting it. And then I get the call that I got the pilot as a guest star. And then they call me back, so I did the pilot, and I go, the scene's got cut down on one scene. But I'm still like, okay, confident. I go and I visit the production offices, and I say hi, and I'm really trying to like schmooze it a little bit. And then the show gets picked up, and they call me for a second episode. And at this point, I had 5 national commercials running, and I was like, okay, you're going to pay me a proper rate. And they were like, no, we're just going to pay you scale and come back and do another episode. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Which I shudder to think of now, you know. But I said at the time, I'm like, you have to pay me properly. I had 5 nationals, I was flush, I'm not going to do it. And they were like, all right, we'll pay you like top show, whatever. But the top of show is like the budget of a show. When they have a guest star, there's a certain amount they will not exceed unless it's a big, big name. It kind of gives them a way to say, we cannot go with this because of this. And so I went and I did that, and we did really well. And then they called back the 3rd episode. And this was a storyline in my character. And by the time we got to the 5th episode, I called my agent and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be a series regular as a guest star where they pay me crap money, but they use me every episode. I can't do it because that's what happened with Nikki and I don't want to do it again. And he's like, well, they just called and said they want to offer you a series regular. And it was just being confident in your ability and believing that you're worth something, even when everything kind of like doesn't seem to be working in that way. But if I hadn't taken the sitcom with the job I didn't want to play, I would never have met the guy who told me about the audition to have gone to that part. You know what I mean? So it's everything's.
And you never know what's going to
You never know what's going to lead to what. That's the brilliant thing about the Michael Caine. He did it as an audio book, and if you go, you can play it as you drive, and it's like he's talking to you, and it's beautiful. His story is beautiful. If you don't know, he was rooming with a guy called Terence Stamp, who became a huge star in England, and Sean Connery, and the 3 of them were buddies, and they're struggling actors, right? And then Terence Stamp becomes a star. Sean Connery gets James Bond. And Michael's doing little theatre roles in London. And his story about what happened and how he got Alfie is a perfect example about all these kind of things happening to bring you to where you feel you want to go. So you got to listen to your gut. That was a long
Does that
answer.
answer your question?
I'm sick of hearing myself talk.
Nope.
Next!
What would you say is y'all's favorite role that y'all done?
Y'all's favorite roles are
Hawaiian.
translate that. Oh God, I don't know. You know, often the role I'm doing at the time, you know, the voice work is great because you don't have to memorize the lines, and I love doing Alistair because he was so complex. You know, and it was always about finding the unusual line delivery. Right? It was really cool to do and daunting because as you know, right? You go in the morning, 4-hour session. You got a stack of papers this thick, which have about 8 lines of dialogue on it, and then you do 3 or 4 deliveries of each line, and you just keep plowing through. You don't have any time to think about it, and it's a lot of work and it's great training. And on the job, I think you're learning as you go. For me, I enjoyed doing Crossing Jordan up until the point when CSI became popular, and we started off as a real character-driven show, and then CSI became all about the technology, and so then my character became the guy in the criminal. So I got all the super long dialogue, all the curare tetrodotoxin, and all these words that I had to learn, which I can do now. And it became like a competition between me and the writers. Like they would give me these like 2 pages of crazy stuff, and I had to learn how to do it. And then I became that guy. I became the guy they gave the technical jargon to, and that was boring. It was really hard to kind of find something interesting to make it. So it was good, but recently I did a film called The Walk, and I've been in this business now for 30 years maybe, as an actor, and I've never been more insecure in my entire life. So this is the second time I worked with Roberts and Netflix. So you think I'd be confident about it, right? I'm not confident about it. I go on an audition this thing, it's a New York character, it's the first time I've ever done anything in New York. And I just don't want to be, everyone in the movie is fantastic. It's Ben Kingsley, it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I'm like, I don't want to be the weak link. And the whole time I'm filming this movie, I'm like, most stuff I do, I'm like super confident, I go in, I'm relaxed, and this one I was just, but I had such a good time. Even though I was like, destroying myself inside. You know, so that was, and then I got to meet the guy who I was playing, which was an interesting experience, which didn't go quite exactly how I expected it to. But, you know, it's, that I think is one of my favorite little parts. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it. I'm kind of partial to this Hancock guy. I feel like I stumbled into something that's a good fit, you know. I mean, you don't get to necessarily pick the roles you get, you know. I mean, you do, certain people do, but in general, you take what you get, right? So it could be anything. It could be something that doesn't fit you at all, but I feel like in a way, Hancock fits me pretty damn well. And actually, interestingly enough, I didn't audition for Hancock, because I don't think there was a Hancock when I auditioned. I think it was, for what I remember, is he was just like this ghoul. He was sort of a more peripheral character. I think Hancock just didn't exist at that point. And later, I didn't even remember doing the audition because months had gone by. But my agent told me that they wanted me to come in and do this Hancock part. So I looked at my computer, Apple Find, looking for Hancock, and there was nothing because there was no Hancock. So this ghoul, apparently, I auditioned as this ghoul, and then along the way they're like, "Oh, that could be a main character, and we could call it Hancock." So yeah, speaking of like not knowing where something's going to go when you do it. But what I like about Hancock is, I'd say my training is just regular acting. I've never taken a voiceover class. But I've focused professionally on voiceover. I've done the occasional on-camera thing, occasional theater role, but generally I focus on voiceover professionally, and that's primarily because I've got my own project, which is, I'm not trying to plug it, I swear. This band, this fucked up band I lead, called the Tuxedos. I'm like for kids. Almost 14-year-old kids. So it's a theatrical thing, and has a lot of different elements. And what's been great about, one of the things that's been great about Hancock, besides the fact that it flew me to Birmingham, Alabama, is that I found out that a lot of the fans who like Hancock also like this thing I've been working on. And that to me is just the serendipity of lucking into a role that I think is just quirky and demented and edgy and all that shit that kind of colors my regular stuff. It's a nice fit. And again, I feel like it's just, I don't know if it's because I brought something to the part that they identified as being, I mean, I guess I
Always,
did.
but
I got cast.
you're being falsely modest. You know you did. You brought something to the part that was you that made it special.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, he says.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
The written dialogue will only take you so far, and then it's totally your delivery.
And there's a million ways to go with it, that's true. And even within the part, I feel like even the actual finished product, I feel like I did a lot of different types of Hancock. I don't think there's one Hancock voice. And I don't think that's just because we do it like every few months. And they play you 30 seconds of what you did 3 months ago. Okay, there you go. I think that also there's a lot of qualities to that character. You know, he can be very theatrical and very extroverted. I think when he opens up and he becomes more intimate, I think the voice changes a lot. So yeah, I think for now I'm going to say Hancock. I like the guy. He's a character. You know, just like me.